Happy New Day, everybody. Hey, y'all. Happy New Day, world. It's Sabrina J. Lewis coming at you live. We are preparing to get into this book read. 8 minutes is a long time when people waiting on you or when you're waiting on somebody. So thank you for being present. And let's go ahead and get into it. We're on chapter 4. We are talking about, first of all, we're reading Humble Consulting, How to Provide Real Help Faster by Mr. Edgar Schein. And we are in chapter 4 talking about humble consulting. All right. Humble consulting begins with the first conversation. So we're going to go ahead and get into the illustrative cases and we're going to talk about some lessons that's going to help us along our journeys. Right. So I'm here to support you along your journey, no matter what you got going on. All right. Let's go. Illustrative cases. We're on page 87 if you have the book. As the cases described illustrate, once the client has responded to the initial pure humble inquiry, we already have reactions that force us to choose whether to just keep the story going with tell me more or whether to switch to diagnostic questions, circular questions, suggestive questions, process oriented questions, or personal reactions and revelations. If you were reading with me yesterday, then you'll know that these are different strategies that you could use when you are in your consultation phases. Okay, so case 5, let's get into it. Let me drink some water. Water is life. Maybe we all learn something that we can take with us along our sacred journeys, and may it be wonderful. YouTube looks a little dark. I don't know why it looks dark over there. Okay. So, case 5, we are reframing whether to develop a culture analysis template. This case illustrates how early diagnostic and suggestive questions led to a complete restructuring of a project proposed based by the client. This is a potential client. This is Marcia Higgins. I am the communications vice president for company X. We are a large international supplier of equipment to the oil industry. Dr. Schein, we are wondering how simply culture growing very fast, are hiring many new people in different countries, and are concerned that we will lose our values. We have set up task forces worldwide that are ready to do culture analysis and identify the key values that we do not wish to lose. Can you help us build the template for this analysis? Happy New Day. Hey. I found this somewhat confusing, and words could not see what they had in mind, that they could not easily get from my many publications. But I was intrigued and curious about the content. So I chose Humble Inquiry to get more information. Yeah, we're talking about providing real help faster in Humble Consulting. And we're doing a case study right now that will lead to some lessons that will help us along our journeys in our businesses to help people, right? So this is Ed S. Could you tell me a bit more about what you have in mind? MH. Well, we think as we hire new people, it is very important to teach them the basic company values so that we do not lose our culture. We want you to help us define these values by giving us a template and a process for the task forces to use to come up with key values that can be taught to new employees. So he says, as I'm listening intently to the culture issue, I hear something that sounds perfectly reasonable that I could certainly agree to do. I could suggest a project to begin work on defining the template, but I felt something was not entirely right about this. And it occurred to me to wonder if existing employees were going to teach company values to new employees, why they needed a long diagnostic process to identify the values. So I asked a further question that was really a hypothesis that I was checking and was therefore suggestive. So earlier he talked about the different processes that we could use in supporting other people. He talked about diagnostic, circular, suggestive, process oriented, and personal reactions and revelations questions. Okay, so going back to the story, Ed is saying, don't the existing employees in each task force live these values now? MH says, yes, of course. Our employees are constantly reminded of them, Ed asks. So they would be ready right now to teach new employees how things are done in your company, yes? I am, in fact, now suggesting a whole new process idea to check whether she was considering this alternative way of thinking. I am leading her toward a different way of formulating the problem and at the same time testing what is really on her mind. So an inmate says, oh, yes, but we thought it would be important to do a more thorough analysis of the culture and have some of those values written down formally. So in between is the commentary of Edgar Schein. So he says, I now face a major choice to be empathetic person, to be person empathetic by asking why she thought it was so important to analyze the culture, or to be content situation empathetic and ask about the values. I chose the latter because I thought it would lead to helpful action more quickly. But the reader should note that this was a very crucial choice point of whether to exploit her feelings or reasons or move towards solving the problem of preserving the values. So Ed S is asking, can you give me an example of such values? He says, asking for examples often turns out to be the single most important intervention because until you have examples, you don't really know what the client is talking about. So this is back to pure humble inquiry, but around the situation, not her. Sometimes we make situations about the staff, about the people, but it's not about the people, it's about the concern. What is the concern? What is the inquiry? What is the situation? It's not about the people, right? So, hey, YouTube, how y'all doing? All right, Facebook, thank you for being here. I see you. Blessings and love, IG. So we're on page 90. So this is MH. She says each team in the field counts on total dedication to the team and absolute loyalty no matter what. So for example, Marcia's immediate ability to provide a couple of critical values gave me the insight that if we went ahead and I gave them a template, they would spend some unknown number of weeks or months with reviews by me to produce an official list of company values to be taught to newcomers. This could be a lucrative project for me, but I sensed that Marcia was really more concerned about newcomers being indoctrinated right away. And I did not see how a published list would really facilitate intense indoctrination at a point in the future. I decided to try a more suggestive question that had it that had in it an idea that made more sense to me given the urgency I felt in the phone call. I could have just asked some more about creating the list and what they would do with it. But my honest feeling was to short circuit all of that and task a risk with suggesting something different, but still in question form. Ed S., are you hiring people right now or in the next few months? MH is saying, oh, yes, this is going on all the time, which is why we are in a hurry to produce the list of values. Ed S., but as you said, aren't the present team members in your task forces living these values all the time? This was both a circular question, a test of whether my suggestion would work, and a lead in to getting Marcia to consider what I was thinking about. I had now I now had a better sense of what was really on her mind, getting new employees on board quickly and instilling the company values immediately. Why they felt they needed a formal process of identifying the company values and writing them down was suddenly even less clear. And I wondered whether that was her way of trying to involve me, since I had written the culture books. I began to switch my listening from focusing on content to focusing on her and her motives and decided to test the situation with a concrete suggestion. So this is Edis. Then why not have the task forces work directly on how they can or will indoctrinate newcomers? And in that process, they will have to identify the key values they want to uphold. like the ones you just told me. In order to teach them, the newcomers, they will, in any case, have to learn to describe the values for themselves and to develop their own examples. Happy New Day, hey. So he says, instead of putting energy into analyzing the culture, why not go directly to transmitting it? If the task forces are already set up, just ask them to evolve their indoctrination programs, which will force them to articulate key values. So now this is MH. Let me think about that. It is an intriguing idea. I will get back to you. We're talking about a case study in regards to humble consulting conversation. The first conversation, rather, in humble consulting. Happy New Day, God brother. Thank you. You have a blessed day too. Thank you for being present and giving me that beautiful energy all the way from South Carolina. So inmate says, well, Edgar says in response to MH's response, I was reacting to the urgency that I felt in Marcia's request and therefore decided to make a suggestion that would speed up what they wanted to do. To teach newcomers the company's values. The key to making the suggestion was my discovery from the earlier responses that they had task forces already in place to do the indoctrinating. I was suggesting a different task force. No, I was suggesting a different task for the task forces. Everything so far had taken place. Everything so far had taken place in one phone call. A couple of days later, Marcia called back. So this is Marcia now. Hello, Dr. Schein. Your idea is a good one and would get us moving much faster. But I have to check this new plan out with our CEO, and he wants to talk to you because this is a different approach. He comes to Cambridge often, so you two should meet on his next visit a week from now. He will be in touch. Sheen says, I got an email the following week saying that the CEO's trip had been canceled, but that he did want to talk about this on the phone, which happened the next day. So this is the CEO now. Hello, Dr. Sheen. Marcia tells me that you had a different idea about our project to identify key company values that have to be taught to new team and project managers. Ed S. Yes, it occurred to me that if you already had task forces of current employees set up and new employees live the company values, why not use them immediately as teachers of these values instead of going through a big diagnostic step to get those values written down? In any case, they can be written down later as they are learned and internalized. This would speed up the process and ensure that the present employees would themselves relive the values as they teach them to newcomers. This is a commentary of Ed. He says, I was taking a chance here of going into doctor role and revealing my own solution instead of asking the CEO to tell me what his goals were for the project. This would count as choosing to be authentic, since I was hooked by now on the solution and moving into revealing instead of further inquiry. Page 93. The CEO says, well, that makes a lot of sense. And now that I think about it, I believe that when Marcia and I first talked about it, that is what I had in mind. But she thought the documentation was a necessary step. I don't think so myself, so I'm glad you brought it up. I believe we will go ahead on that basis. This was very helpful. Send us your invoice for the time spent on this. I was hugely relieved that this idea seemed to fit his priorities. I did not know how all of this was sitting with Marcia, however. I, no wait, he says, had I killed her idea and created a problem between her and the CEO, a few days later I got a call from Marcia. So this is MH. This is Marcia now. She says, I talked to our CEO and he was very happy with this new direction. To tell you the truth, when he first asked me about this, I thought that my communications job required me to do the documentation of values, that he would want this. But I had doubts about it myself and am much more comfortable going to work with the task forces to begin the training program for new employees. So Ed says, great. Why don't you trust this approach? No, why don't you try this approach? See how it works and let me know sometime down the road how it is going. So this is Ed's commentary on the previously held statements. He says, I wanted to keep the door open for further adaptive moves in the doctrination approach if the doctrination approach was not working. and conveyed to Marcia that we had an open loop that could be used to further exploration of the issue if needed. I followed up with Marcia a couple of months later in an email asking how things were going and learned that in the end, they agreed on just three key values: absolute loyalty, total dedication to the project, and a 24 commitment to the project and the company. And it turns out that the template and the period of formally describing their values would have muddied the waters because these three values were, were what they were really worried about losing. Let me drink some water. Water is life. Okay. I wish I had some coconut water. We drink water really to flush out our systems, but fruit water is what our bodies need. We need like coconut water. We need like organic apple juice, and fruits heals and veggies replenish. And so we're just drinking water all day. All we're doing is flushing out our system, but we're not replacing it with nutrients that we need for the day. So after I get off this live, I'm gonna have to go get me a coconut, like an organic coconut, crack it open and drink the water because I need some real true H what is it? H3O? Yeah, some real nutrients. Okay, so these are the lessons from the case study. First lesson: the basic help occurred in the very first conversation when my curiosity and interest helped Marcia rethink what she was trying to do and reconsider her original request. It may have also occurred to her after this conversation that she was being too self preoccupied and thinking that as communications director, it was her job to bring the list of cultural values into some general written form. It was this kind of experience that made me think of real help often being immediate and fast. Hmm. Let me highlight this for my own personal reference because sometimes we think that by breaking things down and putting it in a written form, although we all learn in different ways, we think that that's providing real help faster. But sometimes we just need to minimalize it. Like, for instance, when we advocate every year on behalf of families and individuals with sickle cell, we don't do that with 10 different issues, right? We have three key points that we want to focus on, whether it's ending stigma, whether it's providing direct care for families and individuals with sickle cell, or whether it's changing public policy to include sick leave or not sick leave, um, to include special types of benefits for families and individuals with sickle cell. Simple, to the point, because people don't have all day to sit and listen to what we got going on, right? So the second lesson um, was what of relationship building. It says what of relationship building. My honest questions evidently conveyed to Marcia that she could be open with me and discuss the problem from the different perspective that I had brought up, a perspective that eventually made sense to her and the CEO. We had been able to build up enough of a relationship on the phone for real help to occur. I concluded that being totally honest about my reactions was the right approach. I also learned that I could move from a humble inquiry to being the suggestive doctor within a fairly short time I felt from Marcia, if I felt that from Marcia's and the CEO's tone of voice and the content that she had been open enough with me and could hear a modification of what she wanted. The third lesson, he says, is I gave up a potentially big project, but I believe that my approach to digging out what they needed and wanted was more helpful. And they clearly agreed. My questions tried to convey that I understood the problem, but I saw an alternative way to deal with it and that I understood their sense of urgency. They could see that the energy in the task forces could be much better used to develop training and indoctrination methods for newcomers that were coming soon, and that in process they could construct lists of the most important values. Okay, yeah, it's almost 9 o'clock, but I was gonna go to 9:10. So there's another case study that we're gonna get into. We're gonna get into the next case study and the lessons around that. Okay. All right. So those were the lessons for case study 5. Now we're gonna get into case study 6. Creating a client through a process suggestion. Alpha Power Company. Okay, so this case is unusual because a revealing kind of response on my part in the first conversation led to a 12-year client relationship. The story again began with a phone call. Hello, Dr. Schein. This is Mary Myers. So we're going to say MM for Mary Myers. I am the head of HR for Alpha Power. We are looking for a culture consultant. As you know, we are currently on probation for some environmental violations a few years ago that led to a criminal indictment and a strong statement by the judge that the environmentally irresponsible behavior of the company was due to company culture. We have hired 2 environmental lawyers to deal with the legal aspects of the case and to help us develop a better environmental program. We think this does have a lot to do with culture, so we would like to find someone who could help us with the analysis of our culture program. We thought you might have some colleagues or even graduate students who might be able to help us with this. So Edgar says, as I listened, I got quite interested because I did not have a regular client at the time and was intrigued by the prospect of working with the power company, having already begun to think about safety issues in the nuclear industry as a result of an invited talk to the International Atomic Energy Agency on the cultural issues in nuclear safety. So Ed says, all that sounds very interesting and challenging. I don't know of any colleagues or students at this time, but how about me? I would be interested in the issue. So Edgar says, this was about as far as one could get from the humble consulting or from the humble inquiry, but it reflected my intense curiosity about the organization and was an authentic, spontaneous response. So MM says, oh no, we couldn't possibly afford you. I will mention it to the CEO and ask. No, she says, I will mention it to the CEO and the task force that is working on this. So I will get back to you. Again, we're talking about humble consulting. Humble consulting begins with the first conversation, and we are currently in a case study um, in which this Alpha Power company is creating a client through a process suggestion. Okay, where was I? Okay, so a week went by before the next call. So MM referred to Mary. Uh-oh, my battery died on. Oh no, my battery died, y'all, on Instagram. That's unfortunate. I should have used this phone for Facebook. Oh man, that's a mess. All right, y'all. My battery died. That's that. It happens. It is what it is. So, where was I? Where was I? Okay, so MM says, well, Dr. Schein, there was actually some interest in getting someone at your level that could work with the 2 lawyers as a kind of internal environmental quality review board, reporting to the main board. We would like to meet with you to consider this further. Can you come down to meet with some of our senior executives next week? I agreed, and we set a date. In this instance, I did not consider charging them for this time because I had volunteered myself, and we were clearly in a mutual testing phase, though though they did volunteer to pay for the expenses of the trip. The visit to the headquarters was a cultural experience in its own right. Entering the building involved an elaborate sign-in procedure waiting to be picked up required sitting in a very formal, sparse reception room. And riding in the elevator to the executive floors, I saw both pictures, the history of the company and a television screen broadcasting employee news about company values. I like that idea. Let me highlight that so that as I build my corporation, it's also entertaining in the process. So that when you come to um, the name of my business, when you come to my business or my organizational corporation, you'll have that same experience. You'll get to see the history, like why we started, what was inspirational for us starting, and you get to see now our news and our values. That's so dope. I love when I visit the city and I see certain things like that. So anyway, he says, I was finally shown into a large, well-appointed conference room with the COO, the administrative head of all the company services, the head of labor relations, and Mary awaited me. They asked me about my work and organizational culture and described their situation with the judge and the problem. I was intrigued and also acutely aware that the purpose of this meeting was to determine whether these key executives and I would mesh in some fashion. The conversation was informal and very general, with the understanding that they would discuss the visit, decide whether or not to hire me, and let me know through Mary at some time in the future. A week or so later, I got the call. This is Mary. Hello again, Dr. Schein. The group enjoyed their visit with you, and we have decided to go ahead with you as our culture consultant. Your direct contact will be Jim Stone, who is currently our Director of Environment, Health, and Safety, EHS, and and who is in charge with the program to get the company off probation. You will join the two lawyers, and with them will report to the Environmental Committee of the board. You will be a member of the company's top level committee of EHS, chaired by Jim. This committee is charged with creating and reviewing all EKS programs. Again, EKS is Environmental Health and Safety programs. This committee is charged with creating and reviewing all EHS programs and includes all the senior operating VPs and the COO. We also want you to meet our chairman and CEO on your next visit because he has because he has the longer range perspective on how the company must get itself off probation. You should also know that there is a court appointed monitor who has full access to the company and who writes quarterly reports on the progress of the company for us and for the judge. We are very much looking forward to working with you. This was a lot to take in at once, but it fitted roughly with what I wanted to get involved in because of the safety angle. Thus, begin a relationship with Alpha that lasted 12 years and educated me to the difficult dynamics of a major urban power company and to the whole field of safety management. In many ways, my relationship with various executives and employees in this organization highlighted the need for frequent adaptive moves as new issues around safety kept coming up. All right. It looked a little dark over here. I don't know why. I don't know why it's so dark over here. YouTube, y'all, I don't know why it's so dark over here, but as long as you're able to hear me clearly, that's really all that matters, right? And so here are the lessons in this case study. And we're going to bring this call to a close. So the first lesson is relationship building requires personal honesty. Once I realized that this could be a fascinating project, especially given my growing interest in safety, it would have felt insecure, not to mention my interest in talking or taking the consulting role myself. Hmm. Okay. Let me read that lesson again. He said, relationship building requires personal honesty. Once I realized that this could be a fascinating project, especially given my growing interest in safety, it would have felt insecure, not to mention my interest in taking the consulting role myself. Okay, The second lesson is in my initial meetings with the Alpha executives, I was acutely aware that I was in a selling role, given that I really wanted this consulting assignment. This made me appropriately nervous, given that I was way out of my humble consulting role. But I was also aware that my talks to the internal Nuclear Energy Agency gave me some credibility and confidence that I had something to contribute. In a sense, I was a bit of an expert with respect to how the safety issues that Alpha had said it had were likely to be intertwined with culture forces in the company. The third lesson, the whole experience made me highly aware of how you have to be prepared to shift roles as your own needs, as well as what is learned from the client change the nature of the situation. This experience also showed me the complexity of client systems, which I further explore in chapter 7. All right, y'all, well, tomorrow's Saturday, so we're off. We're off Saturday, we're off Sunday, and we may be off Monday. So we're definitely here Tuesday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I am committed unless I have an appointment. I am here. We're going to continue on page 80. Uh, 99. I love the number 1. I love the number 9. My favorite numbers. We're going to continue on page 99 with how to begin personalizing immediately in a group situation. And I know many of you are going to be happy about that because, well, we work as teams. We're collaborating, we're partnering, and we're building together. So as we're building together, it's going to be important to understand how to provide real help faster in a group situation. All right. So I hope that this is helping you who are watching, and as it's helping me. Um, I thought this was a good season, a good time for us all to learn how to provide real help faster and also learn what it means to be a humble consultant. We could be humble and dangerous. Humble doesn't mean that you're a pushover. Humble does not mean that you just let people ride over you and do and say whatever it is that they need to do and say. And it doesn't mean that you do everything for free. I've been reached out to for a couple of different engagements, and I'm just like, okay, is this a paid engagement or is this something that you just want me to do for free? Because talking is energy. And every time we talk and every time we present ourselves, especially with our experience, we want to be compensated for that. But then there are times when we talk and we give and we serve because it's necessary for people to get information to make their lives better. So I get it. I get it. I just want to make sure that we're not being taken advantage of and that as we're consulting, we're really providing help and not just saying things because it's popular. All right. That's my time, y'all. I'm going to get some coconut water. I'm going to go on my walk for wellness. I'm going to walk in nature and I'm going to get to business, right? Because these lights got to stay on. I got to pay bills. Blessings and love, y'all. Love life well and live. See you later. Enjoy your weekend.